Alright, so here we are with the teardown of some of the original shelves. I just wanted to redo these because there were a lot of mistakes that I made when I put these up, and I need more capacity to store more trains, which I know the responsible thing to do would be to not buy as many trains, but come on, where's the fun in that? So I'm going to be expanding the shelves here. I used to have 3 shelves here where I could display like a long passenger set, or 3 long passenger sets, and then individual locomotives here, here, and here. But I feel like that's not a super efficient use of the space. I think I could reasonably squeeze in 2 more shelves between these. I'd move that shelf up there and put this shelf down just a little bit more. But that would definitely give me some more room to store my trains. Beyond more storage and reorganization, I wanted to have some more structurally sound shelves. I believe I documented the process of putting these together in a previous video. I don't know if that video is still up or not. If not, after I put this up, I'll make it live again. But if you know anything about construction, you'll notice that these aren't spaced the same way that studs would be spaced. And that's because when I had set these up maybe 3 years ago, I couldn't find our stud finder. I knew that you needed to have a stud finder in order to make some sturdy shelves, but I couldn't find it. I had no clue where it was. I asked my family and they had no clue. I looked around, and instead of doing the same thing and going out and buying a stud finder, I just put them up anyways. You know how it is. You just want to get a project going, and well, I did that. And to my credit, these are pretty well built, aside from the fact that they weren't put into the studs. This part of the shelves wasn't as well built because I just tacked it on. As you can see, I have scrap plywood pieces that held them up, and they're screwed in there, and the screws weren't the right length because I just used what was on hand. The shelf that was right here was starting to sag significantly. That's where I had my Milwaukee Road passenger set. And I noticed that, and I was like, I'm going to realign that. I'm just going to take this shelf off and put it back up again in maybe a more sturdy fashion. But then I realized, wait, it's that way because it's not put into any of the studs. And all these other shelves are that way too. And in order to prevent a nightmare disaster happening eventually, where a pricey train is on the floor, I'm just going to take these up and put them back in a slightly better configuration. The next order of business is going to be to get all these trains out of the way of the construction onto the next stage. Alright, I've taken down everything. I removed the track that I had atop these bins, and took all the locomotives off and stuff, and I like how clean it is now, but it's a nice canvas to start working on something. Another thing that I'm going to do, at least that I think I'm going to do, is I'm going to put a piece of plywood over these so I can lay the track on there and have that be a little more solid for some storage. And then I'm also going to extend this over this, I don't know what you call these, the storage cabinet. It's not exactly a cabinet, but whatever, shelf. I would extend the plywood out here, and I'd have some supports, and I'd still be able to park locomotives here, but I could also put stuff up here, which I think would give me a little extra room. Not to buy more locomotives and put them there, but to put the things that I already have in a nice, convenient place, as there are just some pieces that don't have a home, and I think that I should fix that. So, not only that, but I'll also be able to fit long trains on this, which is great because I like to keep my sets all in one place, so they're easy and accessible to get out. But that's the progress that I've made, and I'll check back in with you the next time I make something. I just came in from cutting all this wood. I mostly tried to use plywood as it's what we have, and I wanted to get rid of some of the plywood that's lying around and taking up space, so this was a good use for it. I mostly use a circular saw for this, just a plug-in worm drive saw. And it went pretty smoothly, and I'm pretty happy with the results. So starting over here, each of these small sheets of plywood is going to be a vertical wall. I have one in the center and one at the end, and that's going to support this long piece of plywood. And I'm going to be using these bits of 2x4 that I ripped in half and then cut to various random lengths to put them all together. Then over here, I'm going to mount this to the underside, or I'm going to mount these to the underside of the plywood in both of these locations so that it'll stay in a consistent place. And then at the end here, I needed to add a little bit more length of plywood because the sheet that I had was only long enough to make this, and I was about 6 inches short of the maximum that I could fit in here. So we're going to see how that all goes, and I'll be back when it's all put together. Here is the first level all assembled. I just put on the track to test it out and see how it would look, and I'm pretty happy with it. All I have to do is trim the ends of the track here to meet with the end of the plywood. But I'm pretty happy with that. I ended up tweaking the spacing so that I'd have enough space to sort of maximize the amount of trains I can fit there. And I just tested with this Amtrak train to see if I could fit on a decently long consist. And for O-scale, this ain't nothing. So it's definitely satisfactory, and I can't wait until I can get those shelves set up as well. Well, here I am again. A couple of changes have been made. I put in the first revised shelf, and I think it looks fine. It's definitely a lot more stable. It's not budging, because it's actually in the studs now, which is how it's supposed to be, and well, that's a lot better, isn't it? I tried using some tubular track down here that I wasn't using otherwise, just to make sure the train stays secure on there, and honestly, I think that this is pretty solid. The only thing I would have done differently is, if I had some fresh lumber, I would make some cuts that are the exact length that I have available to me, but for now, this is fine. And I was thinking, since there's really not many good places in this area to anchor shelves, I decided to eventually build sort of it would look a little bit like a bookcase, but it would be constructed almost entirely out of plywood. I would have 1 or 2 plywood sheets between the track vertically, supporting a platform up here, and I would make the height flush with this so I could extend the track further and have more range in terms of what I could put up here. Alright, so I've put in the next 2 shelves up here. They're fine, they're just about the same as the first shelf. I took my time with it, periodically going in and putting them up. But right now, I'm about to start measuring for the set of shelves up here. I figure I can start this before I end with the last shelf. Which I think I can only fit 4 shelves on here instead of 5, which I originally thought I was going to be able to fit 5, but since I wanted a good amount of clearance still between the shelves, this is sort of what I've been able to get. And honestly, it's good enough for the collection I have now and the collection I'm going to have for the foreseeable future. I don't plan on having a enormous amount of trains compared to what I have now. But yeah, the plan is I'm going to have 1 piece of plywood all the way up to the ceiling there, mount it to a stud, and then I'm going to have possibly another piece of continuous plywood, and then pieces of plywood in the middle to act as some shelves, I think I've said in the last part, to be able to diagonally fit in some trains and make sure it's level with this so that we can have an extension of this track so we could fit slightly longer trains in on these shelves. So I'll see you when I have some of this built. It's been a good few days since the last check-in, and periodically I've put up the last major part of this construction process. This shelf here is entirely made out of plywood because it's what we have, and it was easy enough to work with. And I just wanted to get rid of some. I think I've gone over this in the previous clip. But as you can see, this is what I ended up with. I think it's pretty good. Again, this is the shelf where individual locomotives will go. Mostly diesels will end up here. Anything with that outline, anything with that length is going to be appropriate for storage in this sort of shelving unit, I guess would probably be the best word. I ended up making this a freestanding thing. It didn't need to be mounted to the wall in any way, and that just makes my life easier eventually when we take this out someday. But despite it being freestanding, it's actually locked in there pretty good, and that's because I had to contend with the trim around the door, and that meant that I had to cut a notch out in every shelf, and also that this piece is just a couple eighths of an inch narrower than that piece, or it's less wide in this dimension so that I could account for the trim. But as you can see, it's pretty tight. It doesn't have to be super precise, but I tried my best to exercise my construction abilities with this, and I think I did a decent job. Of course, if you were really doing something like this, you wouldn't just drive screws into the plywood. You would actually have some supports, but this is good enough for now, and I think it's gonna hold up for many years to come. Making sure everything was square and plumb was kind of difficult with this process, so I used one of these clamps. These are really great, and you probably have one of these if you worked on your layout, but helps you get angles together good. It helps butt up 3 angles at once and make sure everything's square. And in terms of the shelves, that means level. And of course, I checked with the level a few times to make sure everything was right, and I ended up having to shim up this side of the shelf a little bit because I guess maybe the cut here wasn't so great. But other than that, these seem to be very functional. They look okay, and they hold in place pretty well. Even though there's one more part to be done personally, and that is the last shelf up here, I think that for the purposes of this video, I am done. So thank you so much for watching this, and this has certainly been an improvement for how I store my trains and how I plan to store my collection as it changes. So thanks for watching, and have a great day.